And in general, I'll be giving the do's and don'ts of like academic planning and just general resources and tips and advice for how, if you'd like to individually plan for your courses, how you should go about it. So I'm going to start by going over some resources. Some of these resources you may already be familiar with, and some of them you may not know as well. So I just wanted to give some clarity on what I find to be the most useful of resources when planning for next quarter classes, as well as classes for the future. So the number one resource I think that everybody should know and use is Degreeworks. It's available at this link here. You can copy it down, or afterwards I'll be sending out the presentation as well. So you can copy paste it after. So after clicking that link, that will lead you to student access. You should be signed into your UCI account, and you'll be able to click on the Degreeworks tab. It will be on the left-hand side. And basically what Degreeworks is it gives you a list of like all the classes and all the requirements that you need to graduate. And just a fun fact too, that like when you send in your graduation application, the checklist that your academic counselors will be checking will be Degreeworks. So as you continue your undergraduate career, you'll see more and more that these red boxes or these red rows will slowly fill in to become more and more yellow. And it's really satisfactory to see that progress. But in general, this gives you all the list of all classes that you need in order to graduate. So when you're planning for your next quarter classes, this is definitely your resource, as in like you should look at this list and make sure that by the time you graduate, you have taken all of these courses. Another resource that Degreeworks provides that I'll also get into a little bit later is the what if feature. And the what if feature, basically what it does is it allows you to like hypothesize, like say I wanted to change my major, say I want to add a new major, say I want to add a minor or even a specialization. The what if feature allows you to do that. And a little bit later in the presentation, I'll go over it in more detail. The next resource, most of you should be familiar with this one because many of you will use this to enroll in your courses, which you've been doing throughout this year. So the next resource would be the schedule of classes, and that's available at this link here. I believe personally that this resource is best for planning courses only for the upcoming quarter. And I'll get into a little bit about why it's specifically good for next quarter and not necessarily for quarters beyond that. Basically, the schedule of classes is nice. It has certain features such as like you can filter it. You can filter it by the term. So right now we're enrolling for the spring quarter. So you can filter it by the spring term. You could also filter it, say you're looking for a GE category 4, you can filter it by that. You can filter it by department. So like whatever course you need to take under which department, you'll be able to do that as well. So right here, the example I have is MAE. So it's for mechanical and aerospace courses. That's what it's filtered by. And also you are able to see previous course offerings as well. So that's part of the filter by term. You are able to see like what classes were offered previously. So you know that like if the class that you're trying to take isn't offered the upcoming quarter, you can kind of gauge like, oh, like it was offered last fall, so maybe it'll be offered in the fall again. But I would caution against this because you should take that with a grain of salt because the schedules can change from catalog year to catalog year. So I wouldn't necessarily like set in stone like, oh, because this class was offered last fall, that it will be offered again in the upcoming fall, like the upcoming school year's fall. So just be really careful with that. Don't make assumptions based off the schedule of classes. And that's kind of why I put right here is best for planning courses for next quarter. Yeah, and it's really nice because like you're able to see the code which you input into WebReg when you go to enroll. You can see all these different informations, right? So like what type of section it is, lecture, discussion, etc. The instructors, how many units, as well as the time and place. Another thing to keep in mind as well is finals. From speaking from personal experience, sometimes it's unavoidable. You might run into issues where you might have to plan multiple finals for one day. I think my record was 3 in one day. or maybe like 2 in one day and then 1 8 a.m. the following day, right? Sometimes you can't control it because there's just certain classes you need to take, and they happen to have overlapping final dates. But like, of course, when you're trying to plan, if it is possible, like say you're planning to take a GE that has a like overlapping final with like one of your core classes, if it's possible to take that GE another quarter, you should plan for that. Don't stack your finals. That's just a piece of advice I have. I think something really important to notice that maybe a lot of students might not know is restrictions. So when you're trying to enroll for classes, you should definitely pay attention to if it's restricted or not. For example, if you're like an aerospace major, or sorry, no, if you're a mechanical major trying to take an aerospace course as like a technical elective, sometimes like there will be given certain priority for certain majors because it's a requirement for them to take that course to graduate, right? So you might be wondering, I'm a mechanical major, why can't I enroll in this class? Make sure you pay attention to the restriction codes. These are just some letters, and then if you scroll down on each page, there should be like an explanation of what each letter means. So I believe N means either school major only or major only, something like that. So pay attention to that as well. So yeah, I think that's the schedule of classes. So I'll go ahead and move on to the next resources. Another important resource, I think this is when I personally plan for myself, this is the resource I use the most. It's the catalog. So it's accessible through this link. If you're trying to get to your specific major, as an engineering major, you would click on the School of Engineering. Then you'd click on majors, minors, and graduation program or graduate programs. You'd select your specific major. And then there are two different tabs that I utilize the most. It's the requirements tab and the sample program tab. So here's the example. Again, it's mechanical engineering. Just like a little snippet of like some of the core classes. This is going to be the requirements tab. The sample program tab will look a little bit different. I haven't included it on the slide, the visual, but basically what it is, it kind of shows you like over 4 years and each quarter what classes are offered with like just a sample of what classes you could take which quarter, right? So a couple of things. So each of these courses that you see that are highlighted in orange are actually clickable. And I think it's really important to click on these when planning because it actually gives you a lot of information. So basically it goes over like what the class is about, how many units, and most specifically, the thing to pay attention to is the prerequisites, as well as like if there are any other like restrictions, basically, right? So that's like what the information you can get by clicking on them. And the sample program, if you check it out, basically it kind of shows you like a general flow of classes. So like you might notice if you click on fall quarter a course, winter quarter another course, and then spring quarter another course, sometimes they're prerequisites of each other. And just basically these classes for certain engineering majors, they're meant to be taken in series. So that's like another thing to look out for, that like sometimes classes are offered in series. So if you miss out on a certain class, it can postpone and potentially delay your degree. And that's not something you want. So you want to be prepared for that when planning to make sure that you're not missing out on classes that are offered only once a year and that are prerequisite to one another. And when I get into my example, my demonstration later on, I'll show examples of that as well. So another resource that is applicable to only, I guess, a few people would be the change of major resource. But this is a really nice resource for those of you who are interested in perhaps changing majors. And even if it's to a non-engineering major, like the change of major website can apply to everyone. The engineering page in particular is accessible through this link though. So in general, there are like certain requirements for changing majors. There's typically a GPA requirement. There is a course requirement, like you have to take certain courses. And sometimes even for those courses, you need to maintain like a certain GPA, which is like visible here for mechanical. You need a minimum of 3.0 in the courses that you are taking to change your major, but 2.7 overall. And sometimes there are other requirements as well. I think typically one of the requirements is that like you try to, if you decide to change your major, you try to change your major within your first 2 years. I think it's like a 90 unit cap, but it is still possible to change your major after. In general, the only way that it would be like advisable though is if you can show a plan of you being able to graduate within 5 years. Just in general, like 5 years is the cutoff for the amount of time you could spend to try to complete a degree. So just keep that in mind. So now I'm going to get back to the what if feature. So I mentioned this briefly earlier when I was talking about Degreeworks, but what if is actually really useful when it comes to change a major in particular, because say you're trying to change your major, you're actually able to see what it would be like what courses you need to take if you were to change that major, right? So basically you could go on Degreeworks like I showed earlier. So you follow the process and get on Degreeworks, and then on the left tab, there will be the what if feature. And basically after you click on the what if feature, you're able to select different different majors. Like say you could even add like a double major, perhaps, like if you're interested in that. You can add different majors that you want to take, as well as a minor, if that's something you're interested in as well. And it'll show you all the courses that you need to take. So I think that if you're interested in adding a major, changing a major, adding a minor, or even adding a specialization, I think the what if feature is really useful for that. Yeah. So let me move on to the next feature, or sorry, the next resource. The next resource is something that I actually personally feel is underutilized by a lot of students. This is probably one of the lesser known ones because the previous four that I mentioned are pretty well advertised and a lot of students are aware of them. But the engineering teaching plan, specifically for engineering students, is something that I found when speaking to my own peers that a lot of people don't actually know about. And I think when doing longer term planning, so beyond just the upcoming quarter, the engineering teaching plan is actually probably one of the most useful resources that you can find. Unfortunately, it just shows course offerings for one catalog year. You won't be able to see it for upcoming years. Like for example, the 2021 and 2022 year is not available yet. But at least for like planning this particular year, this teaching plan was really useful. It's not as useful anymore, obviously, because the schedule of classes have already come out for spring quarter. But when the next year's teaching plan is released, which they're typically released around spring quarter, it would be really useful in being able to plan your courses for the next school year. And I like this resource personally because this allows you to do some longer term planning that the schedule of classes, how I was mentioning the drawbacks of scheduled classes, it doesn't offer, because it gives you a little bit more certainty that like the classes that you're trying to take are going to be offered for the next school year, right? Of course, there are exceptions, and it's still not set in stone. Like as you can see here, just in this snippet, there's an example of a class that was originally planned to be offered. I think it was MA 60 offered in the spring. It was removed. So still, there's 100% no guarantee, but I think that it still provides you a really good resource regardless, because it's pretty sure that it will be offered. And basically that kind of like allows you to make sure when you're planning that you're not planning a course for when it's not being offered. So, and it's really good and really important for you to cross verify that when you're doing your scheduling. Similar teaching plans are actually offered by other departments as well. And for lower division engineering students, a lot of the classes that you might take involve chemistry, physics, and math. So chemistry, physics, and math, they each have their own separate links, and I have also provided them here. So if you're trying to plan for those classes as well, I think it's a good idea to check check these resources as well, because you'd be surprised how many students will come in not having taken, say, like a physics course, and it flusters them because they expected it to be offered a different quarter where it wasn't. Don't be that student. Make sure you know when your courses are offered so that you're not put in the situation where you may have to stay an extra quarter because you missed one physics course, right? And just in general, uh, this is the other course offerings. I personally am a computer science and engineering major, so if you're like me, you may have to take some classes under the School of ICS. They also have a similar thing, and it's easily accessible through Google. You could just look up UCI, ICS course offerings. So that's most of the resources that came to mind when thinking of like academic course planning, but there are also other resources that I have not listed here. For example, like a lot of engineering majors involve like technical electives. So there are sometimes like a list of like what is acceptable and what isn't acceptable as a technical elective. So a lot of the resources that I have not provided here can be accessed on the undergraduate engineering student affairs website. And I just have linked right here. This is the link for resources on the undergraduate engineering student affairs website. And here as well, this other link is just if you want to be planning on your own. Of course, when you're coming up with a 4-year plan of study, it's probably best to try to schedule an appointment with an academic counselor. But sometimes we have changes and adjustments that we want to make and on our own that we don't necessarily want to schedule an appointment for. So if you want to adjust your own, like, I guess, sample program for yourself, this is just a link to like a blank plan of study that you could fill out for yourself. So yeah, in general, these are all the resources that I could think of. There are more resources out there. Do your exploring, do your Googling, and you should be able to plan for yourself pretty well. So now I'm just going to go over some general tips I have for when you decide to plan for yourself, your courses. And this is just from personal experience. These are the most general things that I've seen, but of course there can be more specific things as well. But yeah, in general, the first thing I would say is to keep prerequisites in mind. This is really, really important, especially prior to significant courses such as senior design. The reason why I say this is because say you want to graduate within 4 years, or even if you want to graduate within 5 years, you need to make sure that you take senior design on time in order to graduate, right? So if you go into your senior year and you don't have the prerequisites for taking that course, that can be a problem, right? This doesn't only apply to senior design, of course, as well. There are many other really important and really significant core classes for engineering majors that sometimes courses are only offered once a year or even twice a year. But you could still be like delaying yourself and putting yourself behind if you don't take courses at the right time. So the courses that are prerequisites to a lot of other courses are the courses that I tend to prioritize and schedule first. And that's the first thing to keep in mind. The second thing, I was kind of already alluding to it earlier, but you need to make sure that each course that you're each course that you're planning to enroll in, you have to make sure that it's offered the quarter that you're trying to enroll in it for. And the resource that I would recommend, of course, is to check the teaching plan for this. You don't want to be enrolling for classes, or sorry, planning to enroll for classes that aren't being offered. The next thing I would advise is use the sample program as like a basis. So this should be your starting point, right? Because this is in general provides what most students would be using to progress through their undergraduate career. But of course, we're all at different paces. We're not all taking courses at the same time. Sometimes we take a course earlier, sometimes we take it later. So the sample program isn't necessarily enough. We have to be able to plan on our own and adjust based off like our personal needs, right? So after you use the sample program as a basis, I would say that like if you have to make any adjustments, make sure to prioritize your core classes first, right? So this means your major related classes. And like I mentioned earlier, especially the core classes that are prerequisites to others. And I think that's because like you can plan to take your say GEs at a different time. Like if you were originally wanting to take a GE next quarter, that's fine. But like you need to make sure that you have your core classes done first, so because you can always take that GE another quarter as well. So in general, prioritize the core classes, and GEs and other classes come after. A lot of students ask about maybe they're interested in adding a minor, but they don't know where to start or whether it's feasible fitting it within 4 years. It is possible. It is possible to fit in a minor. It usually, keep in mind that it's usually about 7 additional courses. Believe me, it is possible. If you want to take a minor, it is possible. So go ahead and explore your different options. And it is possible to schedule a minor in there. So that's just some general advice. And I can bring up my personal example. So I am doing a minor in management. And so basically what I did, this kind of goes along with the next resource that I'm about to mention as well. I ended up taking courses over the summer. So I took 4 management courses during the summer, and my plan currently as a third year is to take 1 management course a quarter next year during my senior year. But everyone is different. Not everybody is able to do summer session, but you can adjust your schedule in a certain way where you can fit in a minor if that is something that you're interested in. Summer session is a really important resource as well. I would advise this for everyone who's looking to get ahead, or if you're trying to make up something that you missed. Like, so basically, like this offers, it doesn't offer every single course, but you can like say you missed like EEC 70A as like an electrical major, right? You can take EEC 70A LA over the summer so that you can put yourself in a position to take the follow-up courses in the fall. So I think the summer session for students who end up missing courses and they think that they're falling behind, summer session is a great resource to allow you to make up for that. Yeah, and I would recommend summer session for everyone who's looking to make up things. Another thing, yeah, so this is just going along with what I said before. Schedule courses with multiple options. For example, your technical electives, your GEs around your core classes. So say you have 12 units planned for a quarter with core classes. I wouldn't add like another core class on top of that because that might be overloading myself, right? But maybe that's like a good opportunity to add, say, a GE or maybe a technical elective, right? Or say that you've planned it so that you've taken a lot of courses earlier on and you have a lot of space during your senior year. This is like a good time to take, especially like for upper div, like technical electives, this would be a good time to take those. And that applies to GEs as well. So yeah, that's like my general tips. I'm gonna actually go into a demonstration as well to show, I guess, my thought process of how I would plan given a certain amount of courses to take. So I'm a computer science and engineering major. So there are certain classes that I have taken under the EECS department, but there's also a lot of classes that I haven't taken. So I'm gonna be showing what if I were a computer engineering major, how would I plan? How would I go about it, right? So I'm gonna go ahead and do that. Okay. So over here, I have like a certain amount, a certain listing of like all the courses that like I need to take as a computer engineering major. So I went ahead and actually copied down all the red classes here. and I added the 2 GEs that I haven't taken as well. So I'm going to start with the first year, right? So let me go ahead and... Okay, so first off, the first thing I would do is go to the sample program, right? And I see here that, so for the most part, the first year courses are the same for computer engineering and computer science and engineering. I've taken all of these classes. The first class that I haven't taken was EECS 20. So I'm going to start here as my basis for when I'm planning. So I see that EECS 20 is the first class that I should plan for my fall. And this class is actually a class that's offered in series. So this is something that I pay attention to. So you start with EECS 20, and then EECS 22 has the prerequisite of EECS 20, and EECS 22L has the prerequisite of EECS 22. So when I plan, the thing that I make sure is that I will be taking all 3 of these courses in a series. And this is like something I ensure when enrolling that I don't miss this, because if I miss even one of these classes, that might mean that I fall behind, right? Because these courses are prerequisite to courses that you'll need to take within your 3rd year, right? So I just put here as a note that they're offered in series and they're each offered only once a year. It may be possible that some of these classes are offered over the summer as well, but in general, it's probably best to plan if classes are offered once a year to take them when they're offered and when they're suggested as well. Also, I've seen that I haven't taken Physics 7E. I've taken Physics 7C and 7D. So I decided that like this is a good quarter to probably fit in a GE because I don't have much planned here. So this is a quarter that I decided I'm probably going to just fit in Physics 7E here to get over with my physics courses, right? So just a couple other notes. There are certain classes that are offered only once a year and certain classes that are offered twice a year, right? Excuse me, sorry. So for example, what I do to check and verify this is to see that, okay, so this is the teaching plan. And this is EECS, so I'm going to look at the classes that I'm trying to take during this school year. So EECS 55. EECS 55 is during the regular school year is only offered in the winter, right? And then, so that's why I decided to take this during the winter, because I could potentially take this in the following winter, but the problem is that it may be prerequisite to other courses in the future. So I might be delaying myself for the future if I don't plan to take this during this winter. So just like when classes are offered once a year, that is something very important to keep in mind. Probably take it when it is offered, because if it is a prerequisite to other courses, which EECS 55 is, it's a prerequisite, I believe, to EECS 148, you should plan to take it during that quarter. And other courses are offered twice a year, such as EECS 50, EECS 70A, 70B. But just another note, the 70 series I know is prerequisite to the 170 series, which is like important core classes during my junior year. So I decided to plan 70A, 70B during the winter and spring, because I know that like I could potentially take 70A during the spring and take 70B during the fall, because according to the teaching plan, these classes are offered twice a year. But the reason why I schedule it this way is so that I don't delay myself, right? I don't want to delay my 170 series too much. So when possible, it's best for your important classes to prioritize earlier on. Say like you're taking many courses and you feel like this is too much of a workload. I don't know if I could handle this. I want to probably like take, say, 12 units, maybe 2 core classes and a GE, for example, right? That's still possible. You can still do that as long as you keep certain things in mind, right? So 70A and 70B are prerequisites to many other courses for computer engineering majors. But then if you look at a course like EECS 50, EECS 50 is not a prerequisite to as many core classes for this major, right? So if I want, I can perhaps say I wanted a lighter spring quarter. I can take off EECS 50 and I could say postpone it to the fall because it's offered in the fall as well. So you are able to adjust your schedule a little bit here and there, but as long as you keep in mind that, okay, so if I postpone it, what will it affect, right? So now my fall might be a little bit more stacked. There might be harder courses that I take in the fall, right? Or maybe it is a prerequisite to some other courses that I didn't think about, maybe some other courses that I wanted to take, right? So those are just some things to keep in mind. Everyone has like a different path and different way you can go about it, but like, and at the end of the day, it's your choice how you want to go about it. But like, these are just like, I guess, the things to keep in mind. So yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and talk about the next school year now. So. Okay, so this is, I guess, the third year that I would plan for computer, if I were to switch my major to computer engineering. So these classes without the STAR are like what I plan based off purely just looking at the sample program. I think in general, the sample program provides a good basis. It's not always 100%, but like it provides a good basis and a starting point, as I mentioned earlier. I have actually already taken EECS 112 and 112L as a computer science and engineering major, so I didn't include that, but I included every other class that I saw. So here you can see that like I have the 170 series, and I have other courses that are actually prerequisites to a lot of other courses, right? So EECS 40 is prerequisite, I believe, to EECS 114, right? So EECS 40 is prerequisite to EECS 114, and EECS 40 is only offered, I believe, in the fall, right? So if I were to plan for this school year, I would keep in mind that EECS 40 is a class that I have to take during the fall. If I don't, then it might end up delaying me by a year, right? And that could be a really unfortunate situation if that's not what you want, right? So I plan thinking, okay, EECS 40 is prerequisite to other courses. EECS 55 was prerequisite to other courses. So these are classes that I would prioritize as like these are the courses I will definitely take during this time. Other courses are a little bit more flexible, right? So for example, if I go back to the 170 series, I believe they are offered twice a year. Let's see. Yeah, so EECS 170A LA is offered in fall and winter. EECS 170B is offered in winter and spring. So if I wanted, I could also potentially say I didn't want to take this set of classes for some reason. I don't know what reason, but like for some reason I don't want to. I can push EECS 170A to here and EECS 170B to here. But then again, we have to keep in mind, what are these courses prerequisite to? If I push it off, what will it be interfering with? So these are just some other things to keep in mind. So for computer engineering, there are certain engineering electives that you need to take. I believe it's 3. So I saw that, okay, so before I added this course, I had 9 units planned here, but obviously that's not enough, right? So you need sometimes you'll need some filler classes depending on the pace you're going at, right? Maybe there's not enough like core classes being offered at that time that you can take. Like for example, all 3 of these courses, I believe, okay, no, EECS 148 is offered year round, but these other 2 courses are only offered in the spring, right? So I need another course to take during the winter, right? So this is where you can kind of do some research and like look into the different options and see like what it is that you want to take, right? So for some people, it would be like a technical elective. Other people, they might be interested in adding a GE. That's sort of on your end to kind of research and see what you want to take. But I just saw, so what I did when planning this was I looked into the teaching plan. I looked into the list. So I went to requirements for computer engineering. I looked at the list of engineering electives, right? And some of them have prerequisites that I hadn't fulfilled at this time. So this one has EECS 55 and EECS 150, right? So I haven't taken EECS 150, so I can't take this course. But EECS 150 is also an option as an engineering elective, right? So this one has EECS 70A, EECS 145, right? So I look at my scheduled classes, I see, okay, I've taken EECS 70A. I've taken EECS 145. Okay, so at this point, I have the prerequisites met. I'll look into the teaching plan, and I'll see that, okay, EECS 150 is offered during the winter, right? And you can do this for each and every class. You can see when they're offered, whether you have the prerequisites met or not, and then when it seems fit, you can add it onto your schedule. Of course, this is just planning, but like you're not always going to be able to get the classes you want, because realistically, certain classes are impacted. Many students are trying to sign up. Maybe there's a class you really want to take, but like it fills up and it might throw off your schedule. It might actually ruin your schedule. But that's why we have this, right? Because that's why we can't just go one-to-one off the sample plan, off the sample program. You have to be able to be flexible and try to plan around that and make adjustments here and there. Sometimes you can do it on your own, and sometimes you might not be able to figure it out on your own. And that's what we advisors are here for, to answer and help you with specific situations that you don't necessarily have the answer to. Of course, when you run into issues like that, feel free to stop by advising, either in a walk-in or like talk to us on Chat, or like if you want a more formal meeting, you can also schedule appointments with the academic counselors during certain weeks. But yeah, so I decided, okay, EECS 150 seems like an interesting class. I had the prerequisites met. It's offered in the winter, so I'm going to add this to my schedule here, right? And then, so then I planned these classes to take because these classes are offered only once a year if you check the teaching plan. And EECS 113 is actually one of the prerequisites to senior design. So I'm like, okay, maybe this is a pretty good class to make sure that I take during the spring. Because since it's only offered once a year during the spring, if I push it off, I will not have had that class's experience prior to senior design. So in the end, it would be less useful if I pushed it off to my 4th year or my 5th year. It's probably better to have at the end of my junior year, so that in preparation to senior design, I have that experience. I think just to make sure that what the senior design requirements or prerequisites are, should be EECS 159A, right? So it says EECS 113, EECS 170C, or CS 145. Actually, this is actually required. So I take back what I said, because we haven't taken EECS 170C. So as a computer engineering major, we actually don't have any other option. We do have to take this course during this time. So this is also something to keep in mind when you schedule that, like EECS 148, for example, can be taken any quarter. It's offered year round. And it's not, I don't think it's like a major prerequisite to anything else important necessarily, right? So don't worry about EECS 148. Like when you're at this point, like say you're a 3rd year and you're deciding, oh, should I take EECS 113 or EECS 148? Don't pick EECS 148 if you have to pick between the two. Pick EECS 113, because that is the course that like you will need in order to take senior design the following year. Yeah, so I mentioned here that some courses are offered year-round, for example, EECS 148. And again, you can see all of this on the teaching plan. They tend to stay similar from year to year, but they do change. So like you can kind of gauge like a little bit here and there, like what it might look like in following years as well, if you want to plan ahead. But just note that like it is subject to change. So don't like write in stone like, oh, EECS 150 will forever be offered in the winter, because that's not necessarily true. But yeah, this does have every major engineering major though. Also, before I forget, something I forgot to mention earlier when talking about the teaching plan. The teaching plan does offer like basically a list of like when each course is offered, but also alongside that, it actually has announcements provided by CASA, which is the office in charge of like planning, I guess, like what course is offered when, by which professor, at which time, at which location. So they actually provide live updates for while we're enrolling for certain classes, right? So when you're in enrollment season, I think I think it's important to take a look at these, because say that a class runs out of seats, maybe they'll add more seats. So you should check this for live updates as well. Okay, so let me just go ahead and move on to the last year. Let's see here. Okay, so actually, as you can see here, the way I have it planned, I'm for computer engineering majors as well as EECS majors, their senior design only involves two quarters. So I'm actually able to graduate a quarter early. But this is like kind of where the question earlier, like, am I able to take a minor? This is where it comes to play, right? Because say I spread out these classes a little more, I for sure will have time to do a minor, right? Because if you see each quarter only is like 12 to 13 units, I could definitely add in like one class per quarter and be able to suffice a minor. So this is kind of like just what I wanted to show, is that like you definitely can add a minor if you plan accordingly. And just like a couple other notes, there are some other technical electives that I've added here. Some of them are offered year-round, some of them are not. So yeah, you can choose to graduate early or add a minor. And just another thing, some people ask about upper division writing for engineering. This is typically prioritized for graduating seniors. You can take it prior, but it is prioritized for graduating seniors. So in general, like when planning, you could probably put it towards the end of your schedule. That's what I did here as well. So yeah, this is basically my thought process and like how I would go through planning like a schedule for myself. But in general, if you guys have any questions as well, I think I will get to the Q&A portion where you guys can ask us questions.